Alright guys, we're back with some more fantasy baseball content, and in this video, I'm going to help you go through your waiver wire so you can pick out the best and most important players to add to your teams. We just had the trade deadline in Major League Baseball and it was completely crazy. So many players moved teams. It wasn't exactly the most high profile trade deadline ever. There weren't so many like superstars moving around, but so many trades, so many relievers, so many little things that will affect the rest of the fantasy baseball season. So in this waiver wire video, there's going to be an added focus on a lot of those trade deadline guys, plus an extra section after the big list that's going to be 100% dedicated to closers and relief pitchers whose values were impacted by the trade deadline. That's going to be a really big part of this video, so make sure you don't miss that. Also, so you guys make sure you don't miss any of the great stuff coming out in this channel for the rest of the season, please go down there, click that big black subscribe button. Getting really close to the goal of 7,000 subscribers. Thank you guys all so much for being here this season. So please, again, if you don't want to miss anything coming out in the channel, go down there and subscribe and help me get to that goal. But all right, now let's get into it. The first player on the big list this week is someone I've been talking about a lot lately. It's Jesus Sanchez, who's now an outfielder on the Houston Astros. The Astros acquired Sanchez from the Marlins at the trade deadline in a move that went a little bit under the radar because he also got Carlos Correa, and there were just a lot of other things happening in those last few hours before the deadline on Thursday. But I'm so ready for Jesus Sanchez to arrive in Houston and mash. This is your guys' last chance to get him on your teams for the stretch run this season. And I've been talking about him a lot lately. Like I said, there's probably 3 or 5 videos where at least I've mentioned his name, and it's with good reason because he's had massive improvements this season across his entire game, and he's turning himself into a really, really sturdy, steady, complete baseball player, and one that still has a lot more upside on the production he's had so far, which is still fine production. It's 10 homers, it's 9 stolen bases, like a 7.4 the OPS entering play on Friday. That's a good season for Jesus Sanchez, and again, like 80-ish games. But there's another level here, because so far this season, he's setting a career low in strikeout rate, dropping down from like 27% to about 20%, which is a massive drop, with a much lower chase rate, a much higher contact rate, especially on his contact in the zone and contact against breaking balls. Breaking balls were always a big problem for Jesus Sanchez as a young player. He would just kind of flail at them over and over again. But right now this season, his pitch recognition is a lot better. He's getting into more hitters counts, and he's doing damage on the pitches he's supposed to be doing damage against. And a big reason he's able to do added damage on those pitches is because he's running a 3-year high in his pulled fly ball rate, one that was near the bottom of the league 2 years ago, and right now is hovering right around league average. League average is a big deal for Sanchez because, again, it used to be near the bottom of the league, and he has near top of the league raw power, bat speed, all that stuff is plus plus for Sanchez. And I believe that pulled fly ball rate is something that can stick because, again, he's recognizing the pitches better. He's getting in more hitters count. He knows when and where to attack. And with all of that together, his point of contact on pitches is 5% further out in front of the plate than it ever has been his entire career. There's an added emphasis for Jesus Sanchez on getting out in front and pulling the ball, and it's working. And to make matters even better, he's going from Lone Depot Park in Miami to Dakin Park in Houston, which is a much better spot for left-handed hitters to hit home runs. Also, the Astros coaches have been really, really good over the years of getting a lot of hitters to better access their pull side power. Mainly guys like Alex Bregman and Jose Altuve, whose pull side power has kind of been the things that transformed them into players that don't look like a lot that meets the eye to actual superstars this generation. Jose Altuve, future Hall of Famer. Sanchez just hit the longest home run of his season in his last game as a Marlin, a 439-foot shot off of Miles Mikolas. He had 2 batted balls in that game over 107 miles an hour. He hits the ball so hard, so consistently. This Astros lineup after the trade deadline is better than the Marlins lineup that Sanchez was just in. And also, this will be the first time in Sanchez's career he's going to be part of a real pennant race. I think that he's going to be invigorated by that. I think he's going to go off. I think we're going to see a huge hot streak pick up Jesus Sanchez. I can't tell you any more times. Next up on the big list, we have Joe Boyle, starting pitcher on the Rays. Another guy, after the trade deadline, with Zach Littell and Taj Bradley now out of Tampa, even with Adrian Hauser in, Joe Boyle now finally, for the first time all season, has a spot in the starting rotation to call his own, and one that should be stable and steady through the rest of the regular season. And with that spot, with that new role, we know that Joe Boyle has the stuff to excel in it. He destroyed AAA this season with a 1.85 ERA and 33% strikeout rate in 75 innings, and in the process cut his walk rate, which last year was 20% in AAA with the Athletics. Again, 20%. He was walking 1 out of every 5 batters he faced, down to a much more manageable 10% this year. He's carried that improved command, or at least improved ability to throw strikes, with him to the major leagues this year, where again, he's been really good in a pretty small sample, with a 2.82 ERA, 0.85 whip, 27% strikeout rate, and again, a 10% walk rate over about 60 or so innings. This guy is good enough to be a very successful starting pitcher. Absolutely no doubt about it. It has been a bit unsteady for him this year, though, because he did make a really good start all the way back in April. You guys remember, he was one of the lead players on this waiver wire video because he just had a spot start and was lights out, but then was sent back down to the minor leagues immediately because the Rays had a 5-man rotation for most of the season that was the steadiest in all of baseball. Between Ryan Pepio, Zach Littell, Drew Rasmussen, Shane Baz, and Taj Bradley, those guys went about 3 months in a row, making every single start the entire season, besides that one spot start that Boyle did make. And then, as Rasmussen had to get his workload taken back because he's still dealing with the recovery from his third major elbow surgery, the Rays called up Boyle to be his piggyback, where Rasmussen would throw 2 or 3 innings, and then Boyle would throw 3 or 4 innings after Rasmussen to kind of get them both in that flow. As that was happening, Boyle had some good appearances, and he had some bad appearances. Clearly, it was difficult for him to kind of, again, get in that flow in a bit of an obscure role. The effectiveness was sporadic, but now that's not a big deal anymore because he is a bona fide starter in this rotation. And it kind of looked like last week he was going to be a bona fide starter in this rotation because the Rays did demote Taj Bradley last week before trading him to the Twins this past week. But looking ahead at Joe Boyle's future schedule, there was a start coming up against the Yankees and a start coming up against the Dodgers. So I didn't feel that great about really strongly advocating for you guys to add him at that moment. And again, he didn't pitch that well against the Yankees. He has another start this Sunday coming up against the Dodgers. But after that start against the Dodgers, he has starts coming up in Seattle, in San Francisco, home against the Cardinals, in Cleveland, and then home against the Mariners. That's a really good schedule. We're riding with that schedule. Joe Boyle is 12-team viable right now at this moment, and if he goes on a heater, he could be 10-team viable. Could be the kind of starting pitcher you guys are relying on for the playoff push and in the postseason in your head-to-head leagues. The stuff is that good. The ceiling's that high. Got a bit of a crazy one coming up next. It's Michael Harris, outfielder on the Braves. I've told you guys all season, while he was so cold, while he was so bad, while we didn't want to roster him anymore going over the first few months of the season, the hot streak would come. And lo and behold, the hot streak is finally here. My guy's got an 850 OPS in July with 3 home runs and a 300 batting average. And just if you take it now, from his last 16 games, he has a hit in 14 of those 16 with a nearly 1100 OPS. This is the hot streak. This is what Michael Harris does. He makes you want to pull your hair out for 2 months, and then for 1 month, he goes absolutely unstoppable, supernova hot. That's what he does. That's what he's done every year of his career. Usually, the spread of it was a little bit more hot than cold. Now, the last 2 years, way more cold than hot, but this is the hot streak. I'm not saying that Michael Harris is fixed or Michael Harris is back, but if you do look at some of the trends on his plate discipline, he is swinging at fewer pitches outside the zone and making more contact on pitches inside the zone. That's very clearly coinciding with this hot streak. He could sustain this for another 2 days, another 2 weeks, or another 2 months. I don't know. That's Michael Harris. But while he actually is putting his bat on the ball consistently and hitting it with authority, I want him on my team. I picked him up in every single place that I saw him over the past week where he was available. Don't leave him on your waiver wire heading into this next Monday. All right, now just 2 more players on the big list this week. Bit of a smaller big list, but that's because right after this list, I'm going to talk about every single relief pitcher and closer whose value was impacted by the trade deadline. So stick around for that. But the next player on the big list is Tyler Locklear, now a first baseman on the Arizona Diamondbacks. Locklear was the centerpiece in the Eugenio Suarez trade, going from the Mariners to the D-backs. And he got a huge boost at the trade deadline because while he was in play for a call-up to the Mariners, their acquisition of Josh Naylor, also from the Diamondbacks, blocked him there. But now, going from Seattle to Arizona, the Diamondbacks have already said that Locklear is their first baseman for the rest of the season moving forward. So bang, right there, we got a new starting player in a pretty decent park, in at least a half-decent lineup, even without Naylor and Suarez. That Diamondbacks lineup still isn't awful. It's not as bad as like the Twins or some of these lineups that really sold the deadline. But as far as Locklear goes, he's a 24-year-old who's really just destroyed the upper minors over the last 2 seasons. With 200 games between AA and AAA again over the last 2 years, he's got 37 homers, 27 doubles, and 900 OPS. Now that OPS number can be a bit misleading because a lot of those games did come at AAA in the PCL, the Pacific Coast League, which is the AAA league all the way out west and is the greatest hitter's haven in the entire world. It's kind of like playing 90% of your games at Coors Field because of the elevation of all of those ballparks. So taking the OPS out of it just for a hot second, his WRC plus was still around 130 there, which means he was 30% better than league average, given all the context and what every other hitter in the league was doing. So he still is, I think, a plus power hitter at the end of the day. He's also been especially good at AAA Tacoma with Seattle over the last month, where he had a 390 average, 460 on base, nearly 800 slugging percentage since June 20th, to go along with 13 homers, 44 RBIs, and 6 stolen bases. That was only 141 plate appearances, again, since June 20th, and are complete just pure video game numbers. Apparently around that time as well, Locklear made a swing change to lower his hands, kind of calm them down in the box, and have a much more controlled load. I'm into it. Some people on scouting Twitter pointed it out. Again, with those results, with a change like that for a guy this old in the upper minors, seeing that production is vital, and Locklear had that production. You should be dominating the upper minors when you're 24 years old and still in them. And he did that, so that's a check mark. All the underlying power stuff is very legit as well. He was 90th percentile in barrel rate, 90th percentile in hard hit rate. He has 112 mile an hour max exit velocity. He makes good swing decisions, very aggressive on pitches in the zone, while not being an overt chaser of pitches out of it, and not swinging and missing very much either. Those could change. Those are probably the holes when he does get up to the major leagues and face major league pitching. He did have a cup of coffee last year with the Mariners. Didn't look that great in it, but again, a lot of guys struggled in that exact first go around the league. Bottom line, he's coming up right now to a decent hitter's ballpark, to a decent lineup, and he's going to play every single day. I've picked him up in a few places where I needed the first baseman. Just lost Jonathan Aranda in the league, which I'm really just gutted about, but Locklear is going to be my guy there for the next few weeks. Worth a shot right now if you need first base or corner infield help, no doubt. All right, now the last player in the big list, a favorite of the channel earlier this season, someone else who was traded, hopefully to increase their value. It's Mick Abel, now a starting pitcher on the Minnesota Twins. A big piece of the trade where the Twins send Yohan Duran to the Phillies in exchange for Mick Abel and Eduardo Tait. Abel has a shot to get right into that Twins major league rotation and start pitching again after the Phillies had him up and then sent him down earlier this season. Abel is a very divisive prospect though, because he always had these major command flaws, and then suddenly this year the command was back. Command is something that isn't that sticky, so if your command was bad and then suddenly gets good, you probably should believe more in the bigger sample where the command was bad rather than the shorter sample where command was good. But also for a young player like Abel, who is a highly regarded prospect, who is a big guy that has simplified his mechanics a bit, it does make sense that command would improve, but maybe not to the degree we saw it improve. Again, this is all some convoluted prospect talk, but it is what makes him divisive, and it is what makes him an interesting centerpiece for a trade like that, and an interesting spec for the rest of the season. Because the Twins saw enough in the gains that Mick Abel's made this year, and just his pitch mix in general, to make him a big part of that trade. That's a huge deal. They went out and they got Mick Abel. And they don't have anyone else in their rotation right now. They traded like 40% of their active roster at the deadline. So it was a really good chance Abel steps right into this rotation. And I loved Abel when he made his major league debut earlier this season with the Phillies, and he was pumping 97-mile-an-hour fastballs with great sliders and great curveballs dropping off it, and sinkers he was using to the righties. But the thing is, after the adrenaline from that major league debut wore off, that 97-mile-an-hour fastball faded back down to more 95-mile-an-hour fastballs. Still good, but very different, 95 and 97. So without that adrenaline, his effectiveness did come down a little bit. But the thing I still really like about Abel is that curveball. It's the platoon neutral secondary pitch, which is a big deal for young pitchers. Because often very hard for young right-handed pitchers, because most of these guys are fastball slider heavy, to come into the league and face left-handed batters. That curveball is a big deal for that. Also, Abel, again, has the good fastball and the good sinker. So those are wrinkles for right-handed and left-handed batters, so they can't just sit on one of those hard pitches. He's also just going to a better pitcher's park from Citizens Bank to Target Field. So again, a lot of things I like about Abel. I'm paying attention in 12-team leagues. I probably do want to see one start. If it's a slightly deeper 12-team league and you really need a guy on your bench to try and just find some upside, I would throw him on the roster this weekend when waivers run. All right, now that's the end of the big list. But again, this is a very special trade deadline edition of the weekly waiver wire show. So we're going to talk a lot about closers right now. All of the closers whose values could have been changed the most by the trade deadline. The number one guy who I think has now just ascended into being one of the most valuable closers in fantasy baseball is Randy Rodriguez on the San Francisco Giants. The Giants dumped Camilo Doval to the Yankees. They dumped Tyler Rogers to the Mets. Ryan Walker hasn't had a great season. Randy Rodriguez is absolutely, no doubt about it, the preferred closing option in San Francisco. He is getting the save opportunities on that team. And with that, he has some of the best stuff of any reliever in the league. Pick up Randy Rodriguez everywhere. The same goes for Cade Smith. Not exactly a trade deadline situation, but Emmanuel Clase was put on administrative leave this past week as part of a gambling investigation. Don't know what's going to happen there. But Cade Smith is an elite reliever, and he's next in line for saves in Cleveland. I know he hasn't really pitched that well over the last week specifically, and Hunter Gaddis may siphon some save opportunities off him, but Cade Smith truly is one of the 10 best relievers in baseball, and if he gets the lion's share of closing opportunities on a Guardians team that's still going to play like 500 ball the rest of the season and statistically has the easiest schedule in baseball moving forward, he could really get a lot of saves and be a difference maker for you. Then now specifically some trade deadline stuff. Again, Yohan Duran is going to be the new closer on the Phillies. That absolutely murders the fantasy value of both Matt Strahm and Orion Kerkering. But for Duran, that Phillies team is good. He's going to get a lot of save shots. Opposite is true for Ryan Helsley going from the Cardinals to the Mets. He is no longer a closer. Edwin Diaz is a closer. Ryan Helsley now being a setup man. He's an auto drop in fantasy. There's going to be an interesting situation brewing in San Diego where Mason Miller, probably the biggest move of the deadline, was sent to the Padres. The Padres brass have said that Robert Suarez is still their closer and Mason Miller will kind of be more so just a setup weapon, a fireman, someone who comes in whatever inning in the big situation to try and get him out of a jam. I'm curious if that's true. I'm not dropping Mason Miller yet, of course. I want to hold on to him for a week and see if the Padres are actually serious about this, because Mason Miller is just better than Robert Suarez, no doubt. Similarly, the Tigers acquired Kyle Finnegan from the Nationals, so I don't really know who's going to save games between Will Vest and Kyle Finnegan. They're really not that different in my eyes. I think Will Vest is better than Kyle Finnegan. Kyle Finnegan has more ninth inning experience over the course of his career. I actually have one team on the NFBC and TGFBI where I have Vest and Kyle Finnegan. So a true disaster for me in that league, but we'll see what happens. Then there's going to be some chaos in the Yankee bullpen. They already have Devin Williams, who was horrible to start the year, was great in the middle of the year, and now has just had a few bad outings in a row. Blew a bad save against the Rays on Wednesday night. They acquired David Bednar and Camilo Doval. Doval was saving games the Giants, but he's been very inconsistent despite having really high ceiling the last few years. And David Bednar, who again was pretty inconsistent, but they kind of figured out that Dave was just tipping his pitches, and he's been one of the best relievers again from May of this year onward, after he was one of the best relievers in baseball over the past few seasons, just besides 2024, when again, we figured out he was tipping his pitches. There was never any velocity issues, there was never any command issues, there was never any pitch movement issues. Dave Bednar is amazing. From this bullpen, I'd probably tell you that Dave is the best. Aaron Boone's come out and said they trust Devin Williams as a closer. It might be a bit of a mess for fantasy. Again, I would hold all of these guys for a week or so until maybe we see if some cream rises to the top. But this is a weird situation right now for all those guys. I think everyone's value took a hit. Similarly with the new Rays bullpen, because they didn't trade Pete Fairbanks, but they acquired Griffin Jax from the Twins in exchange for Taj Bradley. One of the most fascinating trades of the whole deadline, to be honest with you guys. I feel like those two are going to start to share that closer role in Tampa Bay. I know they haven't really gone committee in the past, but Fairbanks has taken it down a couple notches this year compared to where he's been over the last few years. I know Jax also doesn't really have good stats this year at all, but I think he's better. And there was just some weird mental stuff going on with that Twins team over the last few weeks. Jax himself got into it visibly with Rocco Baldelli after he gave up a few consecutive hits, then was pulled from a game that the Twins were already being blown out in for a position player this past week. So I think Jax is a very talented reliever, one of the most talented in baseball, has been that guy for the past 2 seasons. I think we get, again, these guys killing each other's fantasy value. They probably share some of the save opportunities. Then, oddly enough, possibly the 2 biggest relief pitcher winners from the trade deadline are Daniel Palencia and Raisel Iglesias. The Cubs, for some reason, did not go out and get an impact reliever, despite like half the league getting impact relievers. So it looks like Palencia is the closer there, and he's been incredible this year. Nasty, 102-mile-an-hour heat. I trust Palencia a lot going the rest of the season. That Cubs team's going to win a bunch of games. Similarly, Raisel Iglesias. For some reason, the Braves did not trade Raisel Iglesias on an expiring contract. I think maybe Alex Anthopoulos took a nap the day of the trade deadline. I don't know why he's still in this team, but I guess he's still the closer, so you keep riding with him. And then some more deeper league guys. The Cardinals traded their entire late inning bullpen cohort, so Jojo Romero looks like the closer there. The Rangers acquired a bunch of relievers, Daniel Coulomb and Phil Maton, but those 2 guys don't have the same level of stuff as Robert Garcia, so I think Garcia continues to close games for them. Then as the Pirates traded Bednar, they held on to Dennis Santana. He looks like the closer there, and he's under contract next year, so it might be the closer there for like 2 years. He's had a really good season, Dennis Santana, despite being a little bit more of a control closer than a velocity, heavy stuff closer. Then again, the Twins traded 40% of their active roster, almost every single member of their bullpen. Cole Sands is the last guy standing there who has closer stuff. I think he's going to be the closer, but they might win like 9 games the rest of the year anyway. Also, the Orioles traded a lot of their late inning bullpen guys. No more Sir Anthony. Felix Bautista's out. No more Andrew Kittredge. Corbin Martin got their last save opportunity, but his bullpen looks a bit like a mess. Same with Arizona, whose bullpen was a mess anyway, and they traded Shelby Miller to the Brewers at the 11th hour of the trade deadline. Kevin Gingles had a bad season, probably gets the save ops there. And the Nationals traded Finnegan. I'm sure that's just going to be Jose Ferrer who's going to get the save opportunities. He throws the hardest, but he has a really high ERA, but still someone's going to get save opportunities for a bad team. That's going to be Ferrer. Deep league specs. All right, now we're back to the regular weekly segments of the Waiver Wire Show, where I'm going to tell you guys about some players to pick up in shallow leagues, some guys to stash, some deep league ads, and some players you can drop. But first up, shallow league ads. These are guys that are not rostered enough on your ESPN leagues. Starting out with George Kirby, 83%. That's blasphemous. Kirby has to be 100% guy. He's the top 20 pitcher in the league. Since he got blown up in his first 2 starts coming off the IL, he's a 3.13 ERA in 60 innings. That's an absolute bona fide stud. If you're in one of those 17% leagues where George Kirby's on your IL, do it while you're watching your video. Pick him up as soon as possible. He's an ace. Similarly, Nick Kurtz, 73%. What are we doing? Why is Nick Kurtz 27% available in ESPN leagues? I don't care if you play in a 4-team league. Nick Kurtz is one of the 30 or 40 best hitters in baseball. He might even be better than that. He's like the 3rd highest OPS of any hitter this year. Pick up Nick Kurtz as soon as possible. What are we doing? 27% of you guys. Come on. Similarly, Jordan Westbrook, 59%. I know Westbrook had a cold start to his season, but he's been blazing hot for about a month straight now. OPS is back over 800. Eligible second base and third base. Great player to have. Can't be on any waiver wires. Same with Yuri Perez, 40%. Guys, this is one of the 30, 40 best pitchers in baseball. It's a 3 ERA. It's a 1 whip. It's more than a strikeout per inning in a great pitcher's park. He's an absolute menace. Pick up Yuri Perez, please. Similarly, not as dominant, Ryan Nelson, 28% roster. He's got 3.2 ERA and a 1.0 whip. And again, strikeout per inning. Pitching every 5th day for the Diamondbacks. Amazing breakout season for Ryan Nelson. Has flown under the radar. Same with Edward Cabrera, 25%. I've been saying for months, pick up Edward Cabrera. This is not the old Edward Cabrera. He's throwing more strikes. He's missing more bats. He's getting ahead. He's pitching deeper into games. Another clear top 35 or so pitcher in the league. Pick up Edward Cabrera. Get rid of the premonitions you had about this guy in the past. You need him right now. Then a few young sparky hitters to kind of do it. 3 guys that were on the big waiver wire list last week. Noelvi Marte at 18%. Has finally gotten himself out of the 9 hole in the Reds lineup. He's at 2-4 in their last couple of games. And with Key Brian Hayes now playing third base, Noelvi's been the regular right fielder for the Reds. Noelvi Marte adding that outfield eligibility, great for his fantasy value. Then Andrew Vaughn, 11%, one of the hottest hitters in baseball since he came up for the Brewers after being acquired from the White Sox. And Colson Montgomery, 7%. Still hot, still hitting a home run every 3 games or so. Very worth it if you're trying to catch lightning in a bottle. Now we've got the stash list. Most of you guys coming back from injury that can be contributing to your guys' team soon, plus a few minor leaguers at the end for safe measure. But first up, I don't know if these guys were dropped in any leagues because they're kind of too good to be dropped no matter the injury. Michael King and Hunter Green on rehab assignments, going to be coming back soon. If they happen to be free agents in your league, grab them now because their teams are in playoff races. They will push those guys through the end of the season. Same with Spencer Arrighetti, probably back up with the Astros this week. A good, solid pitcher to put in your roster. Sneaky guy too. Then one that I didn't think I'd be talking about, but I have to be because of the trade deadline, Shane Bieber. Toronto Blue Jays traded a pretty legit prospect in Cal Stevens to get Bieber, so that means that while he did have a setback last month, he is now making rehab starts again. Clearly, the Blue Jays see enough in him to trust him through what's going to be a deep playoff run. So I think they're going to really push Shane Bieber through the end of the regular season. On the flip side, Kyle Bradish has looked really good in his first rehab assignment. On the flip side, Kyle Bradish has looked really good at the beginning of his rehab assignment. I still don't know how much the Orioles are going to push him because we're probably still going to have 3 or 4 more rehab appearances for Bradish. He only got up to like 50 or so pitches in the most recent one. So pick him up, but don't be expecting a fancy ace. More just maybe be expecting a guy that can throw hopefully 5 innings and just have a decent start for you. Then some less serious injuries. Bailey Ober will be back with the Twins this coming week. Make sure you get him on your roster. He's still a good pitcher, underrated guy, even though he was really, really bad for a huge chunk of this season. Aaron Nola too. He'll be back in about 2 weeks. I trust Aaron Nola. He's been too good for too long to be as bad as he was earlier this season. I think he could be a guy that just kind of takes that deep breath and has a nice, good end of the season for the Phillies. Then Landon Roop. I told you guys to drop him last week. I really thought the Giants were lying about the severity of his elbow inflammation. But he's already started throwing again. He's going to make a rehab assignment and rejoin this rotation probably within like 10 days. So keep an eye on Landon Roop. And Bryce Miller making rehab starts. Got to 97 in a bullpen session. It was so bad and so weird early in the season for Bryce Miller. This was my preseason Cy Young pick, so I was really sad about it. I had him on every single fantasy team. So I'm kind of cautiously optimistic about what we can see here, but I'm not like trusting it that much. But just be aware, Bryce Miller will be back in the Mariners rotation soon. Then 2 hitters working their way back. Luke Keeschel and Dylan Cruz are both on rehab assignments. Both of them are going to walk back into starting jobs on their teams and have high upside, a lot of stolen base upside especially. And then a bonus on the Nationals, outfielder Christian Franklin has really good stats in AAA this season, just was traded as part of the Michael Soroka package from the Cubs to the Nats. If Franklin does get a shot to play every day, I see good contact rates, I see good power, I see enough speed, I see someone that can be viable in deep leagues. And then lastly, a couple minor leaguers. I have to mention Samuel Basallo because the Orioles traded Ryan O'Hearn, leaving an opening at first base for them. I know it's probably going to be mostly taken up by Kobe Mayo, but there's a very important date I want you guys to be aware of. It's August 15th. That's the day that players can come up from the minor leagues, play the rest of the season, and not accrue any service time, so they'll still be rookie eligible heading into next year. Samuel Basallo has the same kind of offensive upside as Nick Kurtz. He is that good in the minor leagues right now. So if he does come up, he's relevant immediately. And similarly, one last guy, just quickly, Nolan McLean. One of the Mets' top beat writers, Andy Martino, mentioned that McLean was going to be in line for an opportunity at some point this year because the Mets didn't acquire a starting pitcher at the deadline. I honestly doubt that, and sometimes Martino can't be the most trustworthy, but he said it, so I'm just going to mention it here for you guys in deeper leagues. And lastly, a big one, Andrew Painter. The Phillies did not acquire a starting pitcher at the deadline either. They have 5 stable, solid guys when Nola comes back, replacing Taijuan Walker. But Jesus Luzardo hasn't exactly been great, and Painter seems to have hit his groove at AAA. So there could be an opportunity for Andrew Painter at some point this season. Now some deep league ads. Ramon Laureano sneakily has been playing on a 30-homer pace this year and now going from the Orioles to the Padres. Laureano's the kind of guy that will be invigorated by a playoff push. The guy replacing him in Baltimore, though, Dylan Beavers, pretty okay prospect, good stats in AAA, will likely get a shot to play nearly every single day in the corner outfield for the Orioles. Then you got JP Sears going from the Athletics to the Padres. Just leaving that park in Sacramento is going to help JP Sears immensely. He's going to be a pretty good back to rotation filler guy for the Padres. Another guy who got a lot safer from the trade deadline, weirdly, Cam Schlittler. The Yankees did not acquire a starting pitcher, and they recently released Marcus Stroman. So it looks like Schlittler has a rotation spot, at least enough one we can trust in a deep league. Then you got Emmett Sheehan on the Dodgers. Had a pretty good appearance in long relief for Shohei Ohtani on Wednesday. Kind of got screwed by his defense in the 8th inning. But with some more uncertainty regarding Ohtani, I know the Dodgers said it was cramps that pushed him from that start on Wednesday as he builds up his workload. Sheehan will still be able to get some of these bulk appearances. So again, deep league viable, keeping an eye on him. Ryan McMahon's hit really well in his first week at the Yankees. I think he's going to have a really good time playing in that ballpark. Josh Young was on the big list, has hit well since coming back up from the Rangers. But as always, Josh Young has now picked up a nagging injury. It's an ankle. He was out of lineup on Thursday, so wait and see what's going to happen with him. Jordan Walker weirdly is on like a 6-game hitting streak, has hit well since being recalled from the Cardinals in an everyday role. I want to trust Jordan Walker. I still love the prospect pedigree. He's still only 23 years old. The raw power is crazy. Just the deepest of leagues. Keep an eye on him, I guess. Same goes for Dalton Varsho. Has been pretty unimpressive in his hit stint with the Blue Jays as a hitter, but he's going to be coming off the IL this week, and we know we can add power and speed. I've mentioned Taj Bradley a little bit being traded from the Rays to the Twins for Griffin Jax. The Twins have had some success helping guys with fastball command, so I'm into it with Taj Bradley right now. I'm seeing if maybe they can coax another level out of him. Then another weird one, Ryan Gusto, a favorite on this channel early in the season, going from the Astros to the Marlins as part of the Jesus Sanchez trade. Gusto's big problem, among other things, was home runs in Houston. Marlins Park, much more difficult at home runs. So maybe if he does get a shot in that rotation, doesn't look like an obvious spot right now, he could be someone who's like a spec at some point the rest of the season. And now giving you guys a lot of players to add, so I have to give you some to drop. First up, Chris Bubich. We're getting more bad news about the shoulder. It just looks like he's done for the year. Reese Olson, a favorite of this channel. My guy Reese, he is done for the year, sadly. Drop him immediately. Isaac Paredes, too, seems to be at least done for the regular season, especially with the flurry of moves the Astros made for hitters, acquiring Ramon Urias, Carlos Correa, and Jesus Sanchez. That's filling up some depth to replace Paredes' production. Similarly, when the Astros acquired Jesus Sanchez, they mentioned that he would go to the strong side of platoon for Cam Smith, who's had a career-high workload this season. Smith has been losing playing time, not really hitting as well since a hot streak in middle of June. So we're probably safe to drop Smith if you're still holding on to him. Another guy who's been tied to Smith forever because he was the guy that the Cubs now anointed their third baseman last year when they traded Smith to the Astros for Kyle Tucker, Matt Shaw. With the Cubs grabbing Willie Castro, it seems like Shaw could lose some playing time. And Shaw losing any playing time, even though he's been hot, really kills his fantasy value. Also, another guy I told you to drop last week, who now I'm going to double down on, Jacob Wilson. Fracture in his forearm. Probably not going to see Wilson for like a month, so it's okay to drop. He's been really cold for the last 2 months anyway. And then two other pitchers whose roles we're unsure about. Clay Holmes, I think he's going to continue to be a starter for the Mets. I'm pretty sure of it, but he does look like he's visibly running out of gas, so I don't know if they're going to reduce his workload. They have for a little bit, then pushed it back up. He might be like a 75 pitch guy for the rest of the season, which will kill his fantasy value. And a stuff favorite in this channel from the last few weeks, Troy Melton, now moving from the Tigers rotation to the bullpen after they acquire Chris Paddock and Charlie Morton. I think Melton's better than both Paddock and Morton, but if he's going to be in the bullpen, he's not viable in fantasy. All right, guys, that's the end of the waiver wire video with a huge emphasis this week on the trade deadline. Thank you so much for sticking around. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here all season. We're going to get the new starting pitcher rankings coming out probably this coming Wednesday, so keep a lookout for that. Thank you so much. If you don't want to miss anything, especially those starting pitcher rankings, go down there, subscribe to the channel, big black subscribe button. But again, thank you guys so much. I'll see you next time.